Hello, and what is up, ADHD gang? Today we are getting right into the video. As you can see from the title, I'm going to be going over notions. If you don't know what those are, I will be kind of explaining, and yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so like what is a notion? So a lot of the times you're gonna pick up a pattern. You're sewing for the first time, or if you're just not somebody like me, I am sewing like every other day. I try to I'm doing everything at once. So you're gonna, if you see a pattern that you like, sewing's maybe like it's a little bit, maybe you don't know much about sewing, but like it's a pattern, you can follow steps. And yeah, depending on what the pattern is, depends on what notions you need. So on the back of the pattern, each pattern is going to be different. So since this is like jumpsuits, different jumpsuits, sweatsuits, and different things like that, on the bottom, I don't know if you can how well you can see that. This one says requirements, and then on this one's a lot easier because it says the word notion. Sometimes they'll like be on the top edge, usually somewhere. So yeah, your pattern piece will usually label whatever notions you need. So I'm gonna kind of get into and talk about the different ones that I have. There are other notions that I do not have yet. Some I just haven't really needed, or I'm not at the process yet where I've gotten into that. So different notions include closures, so buttons, zippers, hook and eye, Velcro, any type of zipper. Another notion would be any sort of elastic or anything for gathering, waistbands, stuff like that. And then I think like the last notion that I have, I don't even know what it's called, bias tape, or ribbons. I know boning is also another one. I don't use boning, but we'll kind of get into that. So let's start off with elastic. Other notions, things that you could consider notions, things that like you would need, would be thread to like sew and stuff like that. For buttons, if you don't have the right sewing machine, you are going to need like a handheld needle, kind of stuff like that. Thread and bobbins and needles, I almost never buy new. I'm always going to estate sales, garage sales, church sales, thrift stores, secondhand stores, and I'm always finding bags of thread. Yeah, like it's partially used, but hey, I mean, like same with like bobbins and stuff like that, and like packs of needles too. Like needles, if it's a specific needle I need, I'll buy it new. It kind of just depends on like how much I need something as to whether I buy it new or what. Sometimes I just get lucky. So this is one of my handy dandy containers of elastic. So there is multiple different types, multiple different sizes. So there is more of, I want to say this is almost like, kind of like a beach wave almost. It kind of looks like, it's like kind of thick. It's more of an older type elastic, it's sturdy, it works. This is probably about like an inch or so. This is like really super thick. You can get it in multiple different like patterns, like this one. It's hard to see. It's hard to show. Yeah, like, I don't know what you want to call that. Like, spaceships? Stripes maybe. I don't know. There's those different ones. There's also this one, which is a completely different. So those ones are more like textured. These ones feel like almost like if a sock was like really like scrunched together, kind of. This one has more of like a softer feeling. This one's more like just a kind of like straight rose type thing. There's also this one. This one's like super old, but it's the same like kind of like striped type one. That is for thicker. There are multiple different things, multiple different types. You can get cotton, you can get a woven, you can get just about anything you want. You can also, I know you can get them in different colors. I personally have all white because you're not really seeing my elastic where I put it in projects too much. I know they also make black, and in some places they make tan. If you get white elastic, you should be able to just dye it. So if you wanted it to like really seamlessly match or whatever, this one's like the most common one that I use. I don't know sizing exactly. I'm gonna say this is probably, if this one's like an inch, this is like a half inch. I use this stuff the most because this stuff is mainly used for scrunchies. Sometimes I may use it in like a strap of some sort. Whatever requires like a thinner elastic. Sometimes if I'm doing like a sports bra or like a bathing suit or something, and I really want like the edge to kind of gather up, I will do that. I've also recently been liking big hair clips. This is like the smallest elastic that I think I've ever used. This is how much left of it I have. I don't use this like too often. I find that this is like the most stretchy. Because all of these have like a bit of a pull, like a tension to it, but I feel like the smaller it is, the more like it stretches, and stuff like that. So places to get this, you can get it basically anywhere. Your regular just like fabric store, you can get it at, I'm pretty sure you can get it at craft stores. Most arts and craft stores do have a small like sewing section. It all depends on like your project, what you're working on. Do you need a specific size, or are you kind of like me where I just like to have it to kind of play around with? The best place that I recommend checking, I always recommend checking these places before you just go out and buy it. I mean, depending on where you live in the time of season, really depends on how much you can get out. But this right here, it says it is about 50 yards. I'm assuming a little bit must have been used. I really don't think this is exactly 50. It's probably like 49, 48. This was $5 at the Goodwill. That is like one of the main places for a lot of these items that I'm going to suggest. Try to see if your local thrift store may have something like this. This was in a section where like all the party supplies was. All of the like wallpaper was there, the party supplies. There was like a little bit of like craft supplies, the binders, stuff like that. Estate sales is another really good place. A lot of this came from an estate sale. I find estate sales are really good, especially like if you kind of knew like the people were just older and it's not just like someone who's just like moving out, because all of the old ladies like way back when were always sewing. Like every estate sale I've been to by my house, there's always been some type of like sewing something in the house, like some type of like fashion something in the house. Like all these ladies knew how to sew, and I appreciate it. So that would be like my first place to check, because it's obviously way cheaper. Like 50 yards of this probably would have maybe been like $50. I'm gonna say $50, but I really don't know. It's about like 4 or 5 for me to get like a loop of it. So like this here, like give or take like maybe a little bit extra, was probably like $4 or $5. So I mean, it's not bad and horrible to buy it new, but if you can like thrift anything, I highly recommend it. So the next thing I'm gonna say is zippers. We could just go closures in general. Closures that I have are zippers and buttons. For these, obviously, if you are working on, say, one of these, I didn't make this one, but I make ones like these all the time. If there's a certain color button, a certain style of button that you are looking for, you want something decorative specific, go and buy it new. If there's just something specific, if you're just like in a hurry, you just like kind of need something, go and buy it new. If you're not really sewing like that off, like I sew it just about every other day, like I've mentioned. If you're kind of just starting out, you can get not this. You're not gonna be able to find this where like you're gonna have to get lucky. I know they make jars of buttons by color. I know they do it at Walmart sometimes in certain places. You can do that. You can just buy a pack of buttons. But if you want super old, kind of vintagey, a little bit unique buttons, if you're kind of just like me, and I just like to have buttons because I'm just always sewing something that like needs a button, I would totally 100% recommend thrifting, or trying to find, we'll show you this one, like thrifting or estate sales, something like that, because I have like, that one's kind of pretty. I have like a bunch, like that's like the seal on it or whatever. Yeah, and every single button that I have thrifted it, gotten it from an estate sale, and it all goes in my button jar. It's just a lot in here. I just prefer to have more like unique style buttons, because like buttons these days are like kind of more simpler, and if you want something that's kind of fun, it's gonna cost a bit more. So if you can, I always look out for that. Another thing too is I always like upcycle from other clothing pieces. So if there is a shirt that like your dad doesn't wear anymore, a button up, and you really liked those buttons, take them off the shirt and then give the shirt to the Goodwill, because the shirt doesn't have buttons, but somebody else could put buttons on it, and then you would have buttons. Yeah, I always recommend it, because like even just like look at that one, like it's so pretty. So the other closure I have is zippers. All of these zippers, except for one of these zippers in here, were all thrifted. Now I know there are some points in time where I need a specific color and a specific size, so I will go out and buy that specific color and specific size. Like sometimes I just need something like this, just for a bag, for a dress, for something, and I don't want like these massively long ones. But I also do photography, and I love to do like, I'll do something like this in my photography where like I'll like unzip it and then like put stuff in it, like I don't know. But yeah, all of these zippers came from some old lady. Now this one here, this one is specifically for a jacket. I took it off a jacket. I ended up cutting up the gray zip-up jacket for fabric. I've just been using the fabric here and there because I liked the gray color. I just never wore the jacket. So you can upcycle it off of a jacket, take the zipper off, and now you have all of this gorgeous fabric where you can turn the jacket into a pair of sweatpants, shorts, something else. You could take the hood and attach the hood to something else. But yeah, all of this really depends on, like I said, your pattern that you're using, how often you sew. If you are somebody who kind of wants to eventually get like me, where I'm almost like sewing constantly, I may even do some sewing today because it's just me. I just sewed yesterday, but sometimes you just like get in the mood. But yeah, thrifting is probably one of the best options. Also, at the thrift stores, they sell fabric. You may like go to the thrift store and be like, all I ever see is like sheets and blankets and stuff like that. That's still fabric. I was fortunate enough to get bolts of fabric at the thrift store. I don't really use them at all anymore. Sad to say, but yeah. But you could get a pillowcase, you can get a sheet. I have turned a sheet into a blazer, into the lining for my blazer. I've turned it into a bag. I have pillowcases that are gonna probably be a shirt somehow. You can take quilted blankets and stuff, and like that's a trend to make it clothes. So yeah, the last thing that I have that we're going to get to is my boning alternative, and then like some different threads and stuff. So boning is expensive, at least for me it is, and I don't really tend to make corsets too often. I really want to get into more corsetry. I want to do leather harnesses and corsets, but I haven't been able to start leather work yet because like actual like thick enough leather to like carve in and get good details is expensive. So my like main alternative to boning is zip ties. You may like think that it's not really gonna have too much support. It doesn't really. It's way cheaper. This whole pack was like $1. The main thing that I do is snip off both ends. Sorry, I'm like choking on air. And then you just like slightly like file it down so it's not sharp. Works the same. It honestly does. If you want like a corset that's actually gonna like give boning and not one that's like just kind of for the look of it, you do you. But yeah, so that's like really pretty expensive. You can use probably just about anything. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could probably get into like a straw, piece of plastic, something. Next is bias tape. I don't use bias tape. I own it, but I have yet to actually like need something that like I want to put like a nice finished edge on yet. Bias tape isn't too expensive. Again, every single pack of bias tape that I own was thrifted or like came from a garage sale, an estate sale, a church sale, something. I mean, if you're like really, if you're in a hurry and you just kind of like need something for a sewing class, or you just really need something, then go ahead and buy it new. But I mean, if you have like some heads up time, depending on like what season it is or where you live, what goes on like weather-wise and stuff like that, I would suggest, if you know you have like a big project coming up or you know that you're going to possibly need it, I would 100% check thrift stores and other stores for that stuff. I mean, like I said, if there's a specific color that you need or something, sure, but I mean, you can always dye stuff. If you always find white somewhere, you can dye it yourself. And you don't have to get dye to dye things. You can dye fabric. It takes a little bit longer. You can dye it with like Kool-Aid and like the little shaker packets of like Punch and stuff. I've done it. Yeah, so the final item that we're gonna talk about is ribbon. Like I said, everything that I own is just about secondhand, vintage, thrifted, came from my grandma, came from somebody. If there's like certain thing that you need, say you don't need, say you just find these three. I'm dying. It's okay. Say like this is what you find, and like if you don't need it, and you don't sew that often, you don't have to necessarily buy everything you see at like a thrift store or something like that. But because it's me, I usually try to buy just about everything I can secondhand just because it's cheaper, but you really don't have to. But yeah, I don't use ribbon as often either. I keep it on hand more or less for like DIY craft projects. But, yeah, so, unless there is something specific that you need, I always recommend it. That is really about it for the video. I just really want to stress that, everything is, like, usually way cheaper when you either garage sale, thrift, secondhand, you buy stuff that way, obviously, than buying it from a big store or a store in general, because somebody has to essentially make that for you when you could possibly find it somewhere else. If it is possible, I always keep checking garage sales and everywhere. I always try to just like keep like a set amount aside just in case if something happens, because you really never know throughout the year. So yeah, that is gonna be it for the video. I hope this helped you figure out what notions are, what you kind of like are gonna need and don't need for a project, where to find that out, figure out what types there are and stuff like that. So that's gonna be it. Make sure that you like the video. If you comment on the video, I will like your comment. No one has commented yet, but I will like your comment if you do. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell if you would like. I try to post at least once a month towards like the mid-end. It's gonna all really depend with college starting up on that schedule, but I hope you had a wonderful day and goodbye.